Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Udirayet Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Naishtaki Om Ajnantimirandasya Jnananjana चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमः ओं विष्णुपदाय कृष्णकृष्णाय भूतले श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी नामिने। मुखं करोति वाचनं किं लङ्घते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुदेवताम्। So quick recap. The fourth chapter is essentially setting the stage for the next set of questions that are asked by the sages of Shaunakrishi. So if you remember the third chapter, it ended with a description of the various incarnations of Krishna. So it spoke about the 22 Leela avatars, the 3 Purush avatars, the the uh, the form of Krishna in the material world, Paramatma, Swayam Bhagwan, and Sutta Goswami, while speaking about this incarnation, also continues to glorify the process of hearing about it, which is the subject matter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So in the fourth chapter, the sages, they have been sufficiently enthused to hear more, and they have been sufficiently also given the importance of Srimad Bhagavatam, the glories of Bhagavatam. So now they want to know everything about the Bhagavatam. So they ask these 4 questions relating to the Bhagavatam. Who is the speaker? Sukadeva Goswami. Who is the author? Srila Vyasadeva. Who is the audience? Parikshit Maharaj. And the circumstances in which the Bhagavatam is spoken. So in the rest of the 4th chapter, Sutta Goswami, he speaks a little bit about all these topics. So one thing that we noticed is that these answers to these 4 questions are basically commingled in the rest of the chapter. So the rest of the first canto is answers to these 4 questions. The first canto has 19 chapters, and as we will do the chapters, we'll see that sometimes an entire chapter or sometimes a part of a chapter is answering one or more questions. So towards the end of the 4th chapter, Sutta Goswami begins to speak about the circumstances for the appearance of the Bhagavatam. And in this, he begins to draw our attention to the internal meditation of Srila Vyasadeva. So in the last set of verses, we see that Srila Vyasadeva is feeling unsatisfied and uneasy. And he's looking inwards to see why that unease is there. And if you remember, we had taken this discussion to also understand the nature of a sincere devotee, the importance of introspection, the importance of sincere self-evaluation, and then the importance of taking shelter of the scriptures, and finally the Guru. So towards the end of the 4th chapter, Narad Muni appears. So the 5th chapter is titled Narada's Instructions on Srimad Bhagavatam for Vyasadeva. So the chapter has 40 verses in it, and we'll just talk about the general flow of the chapter. And then as we go within each of the block, we'll talk a little bit about the subflows. So the first 7 verses in the chapter is Narad's and Vyasadev's mutual glorification and inquiries about Vyasa's despondency. Vyas also asks, and Narad Muni also asks. So in the next set of verses, from 8 to 22, we have Srila Narad Muni addressing the root cause of the dissatisfaction of Srila Vyasadeva. And in this, he points out the defects in the current endeavor of Srila Vyasadeva, and he also gives a potential path of rectification. In in verses 23 to 31, Narad begins to talk about his own past life. And the reason he talks about it is because his own life exemplifies what he wants Srila Vyasadeva to talk about. So he, even though everything about devotees is glorious, but Narad Muni is not sentimentally reminiscing with Srila Vyasadeva. But the reason that he begins to speak about himself is because he thinks that, or he knows that there is a message that would help Srila Vyasadeva in curing his despondency and also for the general welfare of people at large. And finally, from verse 32 to 40, we have the summary of the advice given by Narad Muni to Srila Vyasadeva. Very specifically and pointed, give instructions to Vyasadeva. So we'll start with the first verse, 151. Sutta vacha atham tam sukham asina upasinam brakshava deva rishi praha viprasim vinapane samyam niva. Sutta Goswami said, thus the sage amongst the gods, Narad, comfortably seated and apparently smiling, addressed the rishi amongst the Brahmanas, Vedavyas. So we see that Sutta Goswami, through this form of addressing, is talking about the exalted position of these two personalities. So one of them is Deva Rishi, that he is the sage amongst the god, and the other is a Brahma Rishi. So both of them are very, very exalted souls. And when two exalted souls get together and talk, then the topics of the conversation is not only transcendental, but they are of general, they are for the welfare of everyone and of great interest to other people. So in the next, in this and the next 4 verses, well, 1 to 4, Narad is going to glorify Srila Vyasadeva and inquire about his despondency. So Prabhupada in the purport, he writes that Narad was smiling because he knew well the great the great sage Vedvyas and the cause of his disappointment. So the acharyas have done a little bit of, and the acharyas do that when they see these exalted conversations happening, they tend to churn it for more nectar. So the acharyas do comment on the smile of Narad Muni. So Srila Prabhupada says that he's smiling because he knows the cause of the despondency of Srila Vyasadeva. The smiling is also there because of the material, because of the sense that one can get lasting pleasure from material endeavors. So in 7555, Srila Prabhupada writes in the says that Prahlad Maharaj's smiling is very significant. He was actually laughing at the boys' foolishness. They thought they could be happy by advancing in material life. A devotee laughs to see the foolishness, but he's also compassionate. So Narad Muni is laughing or smiling to see this mentality of Srila Vyasadeva that one can be happy by advancing in material life. So the smile that is described over here is Samyan Eva. So Eva means almost, apparent, apparently smiling. So does anybody know where else this apparent smiling appears? In which other scripture does this apparent smiling appears?
Lord Krishna also smiles in the Bhagavad Gita, isn't it?
Exactly. So in the second chapter, when Arjun he surrenders to Krishna, and then this is in the 10th verse, actually, second chapter, we see Iva Prahasana, that like smiling. And very similar over here we see in Narad Muni that Samyaneva, like smiling. And the reasons are also similar. So there Prabhupada said Krishna is happy because the purpose of his avatar is now being fulfilled. That Krishna had come to speak the Bhagavad Gita, and Arjun, now that he had surrendered, he was asking him the question. Krishna knew that the Bhagavad Gita will be spoken for the general benefit of mankind. Narad Muni is also smiling because he knows that this conversation will lead to the compilation of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is also for the welfare of the general people. So both these transcendental literatures, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, will set countless souls to the path of spiritual perfection. And that's why we see this happiness in great personalities like Narad Muni and Sri Krishna. So another reason that Iva is used almost is because this juncture is that also that of Rasa Sandhi. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, his relationship with Arjun was Sakhya, that of friendship. But when Arjun surrendered to Krishna, he says, Karpanya doshas bhata svabhava prachami mam dharma samudra. So he says that no one but you can help me. Now I'm a soul surrendered to you. Please accept me. So the relationship changed from that of friends to that of spiritual master and disciple. So amongst friends, smiling and joking is there, but the Guru has a Vatsalya Bhava. He has a parental relationship. And the relationship of the Guru is grave. So while the smile was there, when the Rasa Sandhi happened, when the Rasa changed from Sakhya to Vatsalya, that smile disappeared. Similarly, Narad Muni and Srila Vyasadeva, they are actually peers. Both of them are Shakti Vesh avatars of Krishna. Narad Muni later on will glorify Srila Vyasadeva in so many ways. In a few verses down, he will say that you're as good as the all-pervasive super soul. So he recognizes Srila Vyasadeva as an incarnation of Krishna, and always very, very respectful. So the relationship is that of peers. But now that Srila Vyasadeva is inquiring from Narad Muni, so Narad Muni, as a service to Srila Vyasadeva, has taken the position of a guru. And again, so the relationship between peers has now changed to that of spiritual master and disciple. So that is why we see the smile that was there is now disappearing. Another reason why the smile of Narad Muni is there is because Srila Vyasadeva, he represents knowledge. So he is the Gyan Shakti Veshavatar. He represents the literary potency of Krishna. And Narad Muni, he is a Bhakti Shakti Veshavatar. He represents the devotional potency of Krishna. And when Vyasadeva is surrendering to Narad Muni, then Gyan is surrendering to Bhakti. So Narad Muni is smiling because the super excellent position of Bhakti is being established. And nothing is dearer to Narad Muni than pure devotional service to Krishna. So he is happy about it. So some other points in this verse is, Prabhupada says that regardless of one's stature, it's important that one take shelter of a guru. So Srila Vyasadeva, he himself is a great guru. In the previous chapter, we had seen how he had divided the Vedas and he had entrusted it to his various disciples, who themselves were very advanced devotees. But when he himself was bewildered, he took shelter of Guru. So it's a lesson for us also. It doesn't matter for how long we are initiated, how long we are chanting. It is important for us to keep going back again and again and reaffirming our shelter to our Guru Maharaj. Second point is that inquiry should never stop, regardless of how much we know or how much we think we know. The engine, or rather the fuel that drives the engine of spiritual advancement, is to a great extent sincere inquiry. The beginning of spiritual life is inquiry. In Vedanta Sutra, it is Atato Brahma Jigyasa. So Atha means now, and Atatha, the second part of Atha means after this. So the Acharyas explain that Atata means that now, after this. So the after this indicates a continuous process of inquiry. So it's like saying that I will ask you the next question. So whether it's the first question or the 20th question or the 20 millionth question, there's always a next question after that. So that is why Srila Vyasadeva, he starts with the Vedanta Sutra as Atataha, that now, therefore, after this, we will inquire on the nature of the Absolute. It's not a one-time engagement. So all of you have read the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and then you have realized that you can never say that you have read the Bhagavad Gita or the Bhagavatam, because you read it and then you go back and read it again, and then you go back and read it again, and every time you read something new. The process of inquiry is perpetual. And we see that being demonstrated by Srila Vyasadeva. Okay, so we'll go to the next verse. Any questions, comments?
Yes, Praji, I've been thinking since our last class, I've been thinking this week, like, how, I mean, yeah, I understand the purpose of introspection and all of that, but how important, like, I mean, is this feeling satisfaction in a devotee's life? Like, I mean, yeah, of course, like, talked about our mental and, mental satisfaction versus where there's, like, souls, or like heart, his heart was not satisfied. But, like, isn't that also like attachment to being satisfied in some way? Like, or
isn't what?
isn't Vyasadeva saying that or getting despondent, like isn't that you want that he wants satisfaction, wants peace, or he wants that fulfillment? Isn't that also um, kind of being apt to seek that kind of satisfaction?
It's a good question. It's actually a discussion question. I can share my thoughts that so the pursuit that Srila Vyasadeva engages in is how can he serve more? Because if you look at his introspection, he's looking at the different points of his service. That according to the scriptures, I have been rigid to my vows, to the yajnas, for the general benefit of the people. I divided the Vedas, I composed the Mahabharata, and yet I'm feeling dissatisfied. So it's the mood of a servant who is feeling dissatisfied in his or her service to the master. It's not a selfish kind of satisfaction, or and last time we discussed that it's not complacency that he's looking at. It is also not not like self-demeaning, and we will see that more in this chapter, but it's very, very objective. He acknowledges the things that he has done. One may think that he's boasting, but he's not. He acknowledges the things that he has done, and yet he feels that my service to Krishna is still not complete. So in a way, that's the mood. If we can cultivate, it can drive us to inquire more about how can we serve better. At our level of advancement, or at my level of advancement, even looking for satisfaction in the more generally accepted sense is also okay. Because we are Bhav Mahadva Agni, so we are in that stage, most of us. So the material fire is constantly raging, and the first effects of devotional life is we start feeling a little bit of tushti and pushti, a little bit of fullness, a little bit of satisfaction. So for practicing devotees, it is okay to also look for a general sense of satisfaction. For more advanced devotees, the satisfaction that comes from executing the order of the spiritual master or serving the devotees. Srila Prabhupada displayed that when he was in Vrindavan. So he writes in one of his comments that it was maybe one of his conversations where he says that I was perfectly satisfied in Vrindavan. I was living there, I was writing, his books were getting some level of recognition. He had already been called by the president, Radhakrishna, and he congratulated there. So, and he was old, but still he was not satisfied because he was not able to do what his Guru Maharaj had asked him to do. So more advanced devotees, the satisfaction comes by the fulfillment of the spiritual vows. For us, that should also be our meditation, but also because spirituality for us is our first step out of the fire of the material existence. So even the general sense of satisfaction is something that is a good enough impetus to drive a spiritual life.
Thank you, Prabhu. I love the example of Srila Prabhupada that you gave. It's very apt, basically. I mean, I can relate that to Vyasdevji's despondency in some ways.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, we'll do the next verse, 152. Narad Parasharya Mahabhaga Bhavata Kachidatmana Pratishtati Sharira Atmamana Sevava. Addressing Vyasadeva, the son of Parashar, Narad inquired, "Are you satisfied by identifying with the body or the mind as objects of self-realization?" So in this question, Narad Muni is immediately giving hints to the cause of Srila Vyasadeva's despondency. So he says, are you satisfied by identifying with the body or the mind as objects of self-realization? So herein lies the clue to why Narad Muni is feeling dissatisfied, that he was trying to, by himself, but more importantly, by preaching to others, indicating that identifying with the body and the mind is a path for self-realization. So, so the interesting thing is that Narad Muni is answering a question with a question. So Srila Vyasadeva inquires from him, what is the nature of what is the cause of my despondency? And Narad Muni asks him back that, are you satisfied with identifying the body and the mind as objects of self-realization? So he says, Sharira Atmana Manasa. So Sharir and Manasa. Sharir is the body and Manasa is the mind, and Atmana is as the mode of self-realization. And then he says Paritushtati. But Paritushyati. So he says, are you satisfied? Tushyanti is the sense of satisfaction. So he's making two implicit points over here that will basically be more explicitly spoken later on. One is that Srila Vyasadeva had been preaching Pravriti Marg, which is identifying the body or the mind as object of self-realization. And the second thing is that Narad Muni is indicating, so by the positioning of this question, he is indicating that this is not the right thing to do. Because the previous question was, I'm unhappy, and he's saying that you have been practicing and preaching Pravriti Marg, more than, he doesn't really say practicing, it's more preaching. He says, you have been preaching Pravriti Marg. Are you happy with it? Is this the recommended way for one to achieve complete satisfaction? So later on, Narad Muni, he will expand on this, and he will demonstrate to Srila Vyasadeva that this is the main defect in the civilization, that they are too much absorbed. The jana, the people in general, are too much absorbed on the bodily and the mental planes. Mana, Sharira. Mana is mind and Sharira is body. But the soul cannot be happy with this. So, despite all the advancement that can be made in these two planes, Mana and Sharira, Paritushti will not be there. So, Narad Muni has given an essence. So we see that in Gita also, that Krishna will summarize his instructions, expand on it, and then summarize again. So embedded in this question, he has summarized the instruction. One thing also we'll notice in this verse and subsequent verses is, even though Narad Muni has taken the mood of a guru, and even though we'll see he speaks directly and chastises Srila Vyasadeva, but he does so with utmost respect. So you notice in this word, he says, Parasharya Mahabhaga. So he says, great Mahabhagya is most fortunate. So, and Narad Muni will keep this separation. That while he'll attack the writings of Srila Vyasadeva, the position that Srila Vyasadeva has taken, he will never attack Srila Vyasadeva. He will always hold him in very, very high regard. So this is a demonstration of how Vaishnavas deal with one another, even under adverse circumstances. And the circumstances here to some extent are adverse because Narad Muni is taking the position to rectify the mentality of Srila Vyasadeva, but Narad Muni is expert in many ways. So he is also demonstrating to us. He also calls Vyasadeva Parasharya. And he is reminding Srila Vyasadeva of his exalted lineage. So Parashar Muni himself was a Vyasadeva in a previous yuga. So Krishna Dwapan was Vyasadeva in 28th Chaturyuga. Parashar Muni was Vyasadeva in the 26th Chaturyuga. And Parashar Muni had also composed the Vishnu Puran. That is another Puran that is exclusively devoted to the glorification of Lord Vishnu. So he's in a way reminding Srila Vyasadeva that you are Parasharya, that you are son of Parashar Muni. Parashar Muni had performed very, very long and severe austerities to Lord Shiva. And as a benediction, he had gotten Krishna Dwapan as his son. So he's reminding Narad Muni, we have a great father who had achieved such great things. He composed the Vishnu Puran. He performed austerities to get you. And are you satisfied with what you are doing? So in this way, he is also reaching deep into the psyche of Srila Vyasadeva. Okay, we'll do the next verse. Any questions on this? Comments?
Prabhuji, it seems so contradictory that Parashar Muni is a Vyasadeva, had Vyasadeva in the previous Chaturvyu, previous
Chaturyuga.
Yeah, and then he compiled the Vishnu Puran, but he still prayed to Lord Shiva, Vyasadeva is supposed to basically take the guru or of the entire but he still, he should have prayed to Lord Krishna directly instead of Lord Shiva.
So lot of it depends in the mood of the prayer, right? That the gopis pray to Katyayani, and there's nobody more exalted than gopis, and they pray to Durga Devi. And Garg Muni, he prays to Lord Shiva, and Parashar Muni prays to Lord Shiva, but they're praying very much in the mood of praying to an exalted devotee of Krishna. So, and later on, actually, there is Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport. We'll speak about it, that how humble devotees of Krishna, they try to approach him through his devotees. Now, not recommended for us because we may not be able to, we may get bewildered. So that's why for us it's recommended that we focus our attention on Krishna Swayam Bhagwan, and definitely recommend it. But even for us, Vaishnav Seva is very strongly recommended. Guru Seva is very strongly recommended.
Thank you.
Okay. So 153. Jigyasitam Shushampannam apite mahadadbhutam kritvan bharatam yastvam sarvartha paribrammitam. Your inquiries were full and your studies were also well fulfilled. And there is no doubt that you prepared a great and wonderful work, the Mahabharata. which is full of all kinds of Vedic sequences elaborately explained. So in order to diagnose, so in the previous verse, Narad Muni had given a synopsis of what the problem is. Now he begins to go into the details. So in order to diagnose the patient's ailments, the doctor, he goes through the same process that the patient himself was going through. So if you remember in the previous chapter, Srila Vyasadeva was also recounting all the reasons for which he should not have felt any dissatisfaction. He was reflecting on his achievements, that because of this, I have faithfully executed my duties, so I should not feel any dissatisfaction. So Narad Muni at this point, he's resonating with Srila Vyasadeva. And he's saying that Jigyasitam. And again, this verse is also an instruction for us. So he's saying Jigyasatam. He's saying you fully inquired. And the understanding is that for us to be well situated in our spiritual life, the process of inquiry from the Guru or the Sadhu or the Shastra should be always going on. So Srila Vyasadeva himself had inquired from Lord Brahma. He had inquired from the four Kumars. He had inquired from his father, Parashar Muni, from Lord Sankarshan. So he had accepted great authorities as his instructing spiritual masters and inquired from him. So for that reason, Narad is saying you should be well situated. And then he says, not only did you inquire, he said, Jigyasatam Shushapannam apite mahad adbhut. So he says your inquiry resulted in knowledge. And the knowledge is adbhutam, in wonderful knowledge. So the understanding is that inquiries should be for the purpose of building our realizations. So sometimes we inquire for the sake of inquiry. And sometimes we inquire for the sake of gathering facts whatever, so many facts that we want to gather just because we have an attraction for facts. How many years did Krishna live in Vrindavan? How old was he when he first met Srimati Radharani? So many inquiries that we make, they're just jigyasita. But the real purpose of inquiry is that when you ask something, then that gyan should become vigyan. The knowledge should get absorbed and get converted into practice. And Srila Vyasadeva had done that. So that is why Narad Muni is glorifying that not only did you do jigyasitam, but shushapannam apite mahad adbhutam. That knowledge that you acquired was actually wonderful because you were able to practice it. And what was the subject of the inquiry? Narad Muni is saying, you did not inquire about mundane things. He says not only ordinary things, but you have inquired about the Brahman. You have inquired about the Brahman, you have understood, you have assimilated. So he has done all these things. He has inquired sincerely. He has understood what he inquired. He has assimilated. And the object of his inquiry is glorious, which is Brahman, which is Krishna. And then he says, but you are still morose. Now, what is the real purpose of inquiry? Two purposes. One, that it should make a change in our life. The second is that the knowledge that we get, we should pass it on to somebody else. So just like we have benefited from the knowledge, somebody else should benefit from our knowledge. And forget the context, but this, I remember this statement, I think I heard it in some lecture, that that just like if a miserly person holds gold, it's of no use to him. So similarly, one who inquires but does not disseminate, that knowledge actually becomes troublesome for that person. But not in the case of Srila Vyasadeva. Narad Muni is saying that you inquired, you assimilated, and then what did you do? You wrote Mahabharata. And Mahabharata, in what did you do in Mahabharata? Sarvatra Paribhramitam. That you explained everything very nicely. And you explained the four Purusharthas, the Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. So in the verse, actually, Narad Muni says Bharatam, because actually the book that was composed by Narad Muni was not even called Bharatam, it was called Jaya, victory. And then there were verses added to it, and it were his disciples, and it became Mahabharatam. And then there were more verses, it was called Bharatam. From Jaya it became Bharatam, and then there were more verses added to it, and then it became Mahabharatam. But this is more of technicality. So, but he's saying that he composed this literature in which the four Purusharthas are explained. And then he said, Tathapi Sochasi. So Tathapi means even so. Tatha api, even so, Sochasi. Even so you are morose. You have done everything right. Even so you are morose. So this is Narad Muni. So we can see this analogy between a doctor and a patient. That when a patient explains the symptoms to the doctor reads back the patients to the symptoms to the patient to indicate that they are both on the same page. So Srila Vyasadeva, he had spoken about all this to Narad Muni, and now Narad Muni is acknowledging the fact, yes, you have done this, you have done this, you have done this, and yes, Tathapi Sochasi. Even now, then you are morose. So in the next verse, from the next verse, Srila Vyasadeva will start his diagnosis. Jigyasitam aditam cha brahma yattat sanatanam tathapi sochasi atmanam akratartha iva prabhu. You have fully delineated the subjects of impersonal Brahman as well as the knowledge derived therefrom. Why should you be despondent in spite of all this, thinking that you are undone, my dear Prabhu? He calls him Prabhu. Prabhu actually means one who is worshipable. So he always has this mood of showing utmost respect to Vyasadeva. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, the Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutra compiled by Srila Vyasadeva is the full deliberation of the impersonal absolute feature. And it is accepted as the most exalted philosophical exposition in the world. It covers the subject of eternity, and the methods are scholarly. So there cannot be any doubt about the transcendental scholarship of Vyasadeva. So why should he lament? So again, Vyasadeva is ratifying the symptoms of, Narad Muni is ratifying the symptoms of Srila Vyasadeva. So he says that you have done so much, but then still he says you are akratartha. So akratartha, artha means useful. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Artha means wealth actually, but it means of some value. Akratartha means of no value. So he's saying despite all this, you are feeling that everything that you have done is of no value. Despite all this, you are still sochasi. You are still lamenting. You are morose. You are unhappy. So, one in spiritual life should have the opposite feelings. They should feel fulfilled, satisfied, happy, or at least they should experience some symptoms of it. But Srila Vyasadeva is not. So, there's a nice commentary on this verse by Jiva Goswami in Priti Sandarbha. And I just wanted to read it because even though Narad Muni hasn't spoken about it yet, but Jiva Goswami, he contrasts the mood of Priti with the mood of scholarly delineation. So Jiva Goswami writes that mere Brahman realization, as Vyasadeva had achieved and described in his books, cannot satisfy the soul. The soul's true need is love, Priti. Direct perception of Bhagwan, who appears as Paramatma and in many other forms, is the highest kind of liberation. In that highest liberation, the most exalted spiritual activities are known by names like bhakti, devotional service, and priti, spiritual love. Spiritual love is considered the highest of all spiritual sentiments. Priti eradicates all suffering. Without priti, it is not possible to attain the highest stage of spiritual life. Priti is not dependent on anything else. To the extent that we have priti, we are fortunate. Priti is present as we make progress towards liberation. It is also present when we have attained liberation. That is the correct understanding. The form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is full of transcendental bliss. Transcendental bliss is the abode of Priti. Therefore, Priti is most important in the experience of transcendental bliss. Therefore, a spirit soul should always try to attain Priti. Priti is the greatest need, the highest goal of all spirit souls. So this is Jiva Goswami writing in the Sandarbhas. And of course, everything that Jiva Goswami writes is saturated with philosophy, and it's beyond our scope to, and we don't have the time to have a deep discussion. But essentially, what he is, the reason Jiva Goswami wrote this particular commentary on this particular verse is because he wants to contrast the Brahman realization with Priti. And he does so by glorifying Priti. That all that can be achieved in Priti is unique to Priti. Okay. Any questions, comments on this?
Prajit, did you mention, like, in the first verse when we started this chapter, like, did you mention Narada is Deva Rishi and like Vyasadeva is Brahma Rishi? Is that
Yes.
what it is?
Yes, yes. That was actually the prayer when Parashar Muni, he had performed austerities, and Lord Shiva had come to give him benediction. So then Parashar had said that I wanted a son of the same stature as my grandfather. So Parashar's father is Rishi Shakti, and his grandfather is Vashishta Muni, who is a Brahma Rishi. So because of the benediction of Lord Shiva, he got a son who is at the same stature as a Brahma Rishi.
So Brahma Rishis are, like Brahman realized, right? But Vyasadeva more than that, isn't it?
Not really. The Brahma Rishis are Brahman realized, And so as far as I understand that Brahma, the rishis, there are three categories of rishis: Raja rishis, Maharishi, and Brahma rishis. And basically corresponding to increased levels of devotion or realization. Like Parikshit Maharaj, he is addressed as a Raj Rishi. And Parikshit Maharaj is a pure devotee of Krishna, but based on his circumstances and position, he is called Raj Rishi. When Vishwamitra initially started his spiritual path, then we see that first of all, after austerities, he got the position of Raja Rishi, then he performed more austerities, then Maharishi, and then after that, Brahma Rishi. So Brahma Rishi is the most exalted position amongst the rishis. Doesn't mean Brahman realized.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Sure. Anything else? Any other question?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna Gaurasundar Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances.
Prabhu, you're talking about the real purpose of inquiry, and you mentioned 2 points. So the second point you mentioned was the purpose of inquiry is to pass on the knowledge that we get to someone else. So I was kind of introspecting a little bit on that point. So in our parampara, we have this no intoxication, no meat eating, no illicit sex, no gambling, and eat prasadam. So when we discuss or share knowledge with others, we tell these as the prime thing in our parampara, and also devotion to Krishna. So my question is, sometimes we struggle, not sometimes, most of the time we struggle to follow these regulative principles. And it is very mechanical we do this because at least I clearly know that I don't have sufficient devotion towards Krishna, which makes me struggle a lot to follow the 4 regulative principles. Ultimately we do it, but there is a lot of frustration in following that 4 regulative principles. And when we share with others, we have so the point, the previous verse you were talking about, like understanding, assimilating, and putting in practice. So we have not come to a stage where we are doing it very happily. Most of the time we are doing in a frustration, or because we are lacking the devotion, pure devotion towards Krishna. So when we pass on this knowledge, it becomes somehow like a knowledge, because are not pure enough. Is it all that theoretically this is what the principle is, but when we share with others, we know that we are struggling within ourselves, that did you understand?
I'm trying to understand. I have 2 challenges, Prabhu. One is that your voice keeps breaking. So I have to keep trying to kind of fill in the blanks. I think I have the essence of the question, and let me try and answer it. If that's not the question you were asking, then please correct me. The sense I get,
yes, Prabhu.
Thank you. So the sense I get is you're asking that that if we get knowledge, and before assimilating it completely, is it okay for us to start giving it to other people? That we get knowledge that Krishna is God, we should chant our good rounds, we should follow the 4 regulative principles. We ourselves are struggling with it. Then is it hypocritical for us to go and tell other people to do that? Was that your question?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu.
So it's a very good and a practical question, Prabhu. Thank you for asking. So, so I can share with you, this is a question that I've asked myself to different, including Guru Maharaj, to different senior devotees. And the general consistent theme in the answers that I get is that the knowledge that you get, so what we're struggling is with the implementation of the knowledge, not with the knowledge itself. If you have doubts about the knowledge, then we should not disseminate it. That would be hypocritical. So if we had doubts that Krishna actually came 5,000 years ago, if you have doubts that Krishna is just a historical personality, or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was just a great sage in this time, and maybe he's been glorified, then we should not say to others, Krishna is God, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is God. So, so to that extent, I agree with you that we should have the conviction of the knowledge before we disseminate it. The second part is that, is our practice perfect? When we say to somebody, chant rounds with full concentration, are we chanting for rounds with full concentration ourselves? If not, we should still give the knowledge over as long as we are sincerely trying to chant with full concentration. So we are convinced about the need to chant with full concentration. We are convinced about the need to surrender to Guru and Krishna. We're convinced about the need to associate with devotees, follow the 4 regulative principles. We are sincerely trying to follow it in our lives. We are succeeding to some extent, we are failing to some extent. So that's what we share. We share our conviction about our knowledge. We share about the importance of the practice. And yes, in more intimate circles, we can also share our struggles. So when we say that we want to chant, so when you're preaching to somebody new, then when you say that chanting is the most powerful way to make spiritual advancements, then at least you're convinced that it's the most powerful way. Now, maybe you're not following through with it despite your best efforts, but there's no hypocrisy over there. What you're presenting to the other person is your sincerity and your conviction. The hypocrisy would come is if you yourself are not convinced. You say to somebody that you chant, but you're not chanting yourself. You say to somebody that read the Bhagavad Gita, but you don't read the Bhagavad Gita yourself. That is hypocrisy. So that we should not do. Ultimately, what we offer is a conviction in the Gyan and a sincerity in the Vigyan.
Thank you, Prabhu. That was nice.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam, Prabhu. Prabhu, I have a question. Can I ask, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. May I know who is this?
Hemanathan, Prabhu. I am Hemanathan.
Hare Krishna, Hemanathan, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, like just now, while you were just some time ago, you have told something like a person who has more knowledge and is not disseminating will get bewildered due course of time. One thing, I'm trying to understand to reconcile 2-3 things together. Like Prabhupada says in one of this thing, my disciples should read all my books perfectly, that they should get everything. Like a lawyer talks on argues on he is very perfect in understanding everything. Whatever everybody says, he argues like a lawyer, fully convinced and have full knowledge. And the other point, Prabhupada says that I don't want my disciples to be like bookworms. So these are the three statements I'm trying to reconcile and understand, Prabhu. I just wanted your help. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu. So I'm kind of thinking aloud over here. I think this is thank you. It's good realizations from your part. So Prabhupada, if you look at his mood, it has always been very, very practical. Everything that he did, everything that he said, everything that he wanted others to follow was geared towards the practical implementation. If you look at the purports of Srila Prabhupada's books, there are some core points that he makes over and over again. And the points are basically about practice. Therefore, one should chant Krishna's name. Therefore, one should always associate with devotees. Therefore, one should always try and please the spiritual master. So, so these are just very, very these are very, very practical points that Srila Prabhupada wants us to take from the perspective of we understand it and then we practice it. And when he says that he doesn't want his disciples to be bookworms, the sense I get he's saying is that he just doesn't want them to be intellects. That you read the books, you understand how the chapters are organized and what the flow is, but you never practice. That's a bookworm. It's like when I attend these interfaith dialogues. So especially in the Vaishnava Christian dialogue, some of the people who attend, they're Christians, but they're Vaishnava scholars. They teach in Harvard University or Temple University, and they have very, very deep understanding of the Bhagavad Gita. They have read so many commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. Many of them have read Srimad Bhagavatam, even the Sandarbhas. So they have a lot of knowledge. But they are continuing with their own life. They eat meat, they take liquor. They're not Vaishnavas. Some of them are atheists, some of them are Christians. So that is what Prabhupada doesn't want us to be. He doesn't want us to just read his books from an academic scholarly perspective, but not practice it. And the sampradaya that Srila Prabhupada comes from, that we are joined, has a very strong mood of preaching. Beginning from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, very, very strong mood of preaching. And that's why Prabhupada would say that if you have to become a strong preacher, you have to be like a lawyer. You should not only understand the points that you will make, you should also understand the points that the other person will make. So in one of the purports of the verse, and I've forgotten the verse, but Prabhupada says that only after one has read the Shat Sandarbhas and studied the Vedas should one read the Bhagavatam. And the understanding is that the Sat Sandarbhas, not the Sat Sandarbhas, sorry, the Sat Darshanas. So these are the 6 atheistic philosophies of the way, like the Uttar Mimamsa, the Purva Mimamsa, the philosophy of Kapila. So these are the atheistic philosophy. So Prabhupada recommends that you should read them, because when you read them, you understand what they are speaking about, what is the strengths and what is the weaknesses, and then you can based on what you understand, you can address them and defeat them. So in a more general way, what he's saying is that if you read, you should practice. If you read, you should preach. So these are the two life aids of Gaudiya Vaishnava devotees. That you read the scriptures and then you whatever you read, you practice. And the second is that whatever you read, you preach.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. Thanks for the explanation.
Thank you, Prabhu. So we'll go on to the 5th verse. Vyasuvacha Asteva me sarvam. Let me see what the meaning is. Asteva me sarvam idam tvaktam tathapi natma paritushyate me tanmulam avyaktam agadabodham prachhami tvatma bhavatma bhutam. Srila Vyasadeva said, all you have said about me is perfectly correct. Despite all this, I am not pacified. I therefore question you about the root cause of my dissatisfaction, for you are a man of unlimited knowledge due to your being the offspring of one, Brahma, who is self-born, without mundane father and mother. So Srila Vyasadeva, he says that whatever you say about me is perfectly correct. So what is it that Narad Muni had said about Vyasadeva? About his deep realizations, about his study of the scriptures, about his writing of the Mahabharata. So Vyasadeva is saying that with humility. So this is not a symptom of pride. So it is true humility. So it's not that Vyasadeva will say, no, I really didn't do any of this. It's very kind of you to say, but actually no. So this kind of false humility, it actually is a big impediment in the transfer of knowledge and realization. So I think I shared this before, Hridayananda Maharaj's definition of humility, which I always quote because it's so apt, that humility is not thinking less about yourself, is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking less about yourself. So humility is not self-abnegation. It's not saying that you're nonsense, you're nobody, but it's spending less time thinking about, being less self-absorbed. That is humility. Vyasadeva is demonstrating genuine humility. He's saying, yes, it's true. I have done all this, but in spite of this, he says, tathapi. He says, in spite of this, he said, tathapi na atma paritushyati me. That in spite of all that, I am feeling unhappy. So Narad Muni in the previous verse had said that tathapi sochati, that in spite of all that, you are lamenting. Vyasadeva is saying, yes, you are right. Tathapi, in spite of all this, na atma paritushyati, that I am not feeling any self-satisfaction. So at a superficial level, there is agreement, which basically is now the signal to go at a deeper level. So both Narad Muni and Vyasadeva, they have shared the superficial symptoms, the external qualifications, understood that all that Vyasadeva has done, accepted the fact that he is Naatma Paritushyati, he's feeling unease, he's Sochati, he's lamenting. But now he's saying that give me the root cause of my dissatisfaction. So the reason that one asks for the root cause is that you can uproot it. You can cut a tree, but then it might come up again. You may pluck the leaves will go back again. But when somebody gives you the root cause and you're able to extract the roots, then it will never appear again. So that's what Vyasadeva is saying. He's saying, give me the root cause, and I will do my best to uproot it. So Narad might asked Vyasadeva that why are you coming to me for these questions? You yourself are so qualified. You have done so many things. So Vyasadeva said, no. You are Agad Bodham. So you're a man of unlimited knowledge, and you have great lineage. He says that you are the son of the self-born, the son of Brahma. So Narad Muni, as we know, is the Manas Putra. He is born out of the deliberation of Brahma. So Prabhupada, in the purport, he says that in the material world, everyone is engrossed with the idea of identifying with the body or the mind with the self. As such, all knowledge disseminated in the material world is related either with the body or with the mind. And that is the root cause of all despondencies. This is not always detected, even though one may be the greatest erudite scholar in materialistic knowledge. It is good, therefore, to approach a personality like Narad to solve the root cause of all despondencies. Why Narad should be approached is explained below. So that is explained in the next verse. So we'll do the next verse and then we'll stop for, we'll end at that verse and then we'll stop for any questions or comments. Savai Bhavan Veda Samasta Guyam Upasito Yat Purusha Purana Pravareshu Manaseva Vishwam Srajate Avateyati Gunera Sangha. My Lord, everything that is mysterious is known to you because you worship the Creator and the Destroyer of the material world and the maintainer of the spiritual world. The original personality of Godhead, who is transcendental to the three modes of material nature. So Srila Vyasadeva is continuing to establish the qualifications of Narad Muni as to why he is a suitable person to help him over here. So he says, Savai Bhavan Veda Samasta Guyam. So he says that Samasta Guyam. Guyam is secret. Samasta Guyam means all the secrets. So he says that you know all. Veda is to know. He says you know all the secrets. And these secrets, of course, are transcendental secrets. So that makes him qualified. And why does he know the secrets? So you see that Srila Vyasadeva, the real glory of Narad Muni is not that he is Savai Bhavan Veda Samasta Guyam. The real glory is that the source of this knowledge comes from his connection with the creator and the destroyer of the material world and the maintainer of the spiritual world, the original personality of Godhead, who is transcendental to the three modes of material nature. So Srila Vyasadeva, so this is one very exalted person talking to another very exalted person. He's saying, you know, you have a lot of knowledge. And Narad Muni might say there are other people who have a lot of knowledge. Vyasadeva, no. Your knowledge comes from your sparsha, your contact with Krishna. And that's what makes you special. So he says, para avara. So para means transcendental and avara means material. So para avara isha. So the controller of the transcendental and the material world. And manaseva vishvam srijati. So Vyasadeva, he is giving all the necessary qualifications that can only fit Krishna. So Paravara Isha could be Lord Vishnu or could be Brahma also. But he says, Manaseva Vishram Shrajati. So Manaseva Vishram Shrajati means that person who Manaseva, simply by his mind, Vishram Shrajati, creates this whole universe. That is Krishna. So Krishna does not do anything. He just wills. He says, let there be universes created. And then Krishna expands, and there is expansions and further expansions, and Mahavishnu breathes, and the universes are created. But is Krishna doing anything? No, he's not doing anything. He's Manasayeva. He's just willing it to happen. And all this material creation that is being created, Gunera Sangha, that he has nothing to do with it. The material world is run by the three modes of material nature. But Krishna is completely transcendental to it. So Vyasadeva, in doing so, is glorifying Narad Muni because of the knowledge he has. He is also really glorifying Narad Muni because of his connection to Krishna. And he is, of course, glorifying Krishna also. So self-glorification is not flattery. Because Narad Muni might say that you're flattering me, Prabhu. But it is actually recommended that when we approach our gurus, when we approach senior devotees, then it is recommended that there should be some glorification. That opens our heart, and that opens their heart also. So it is said that the spiritual knowledge, it does not flow through the tongue to the ear. It actually flows from one's heart to another's heart. And the process of opening one's heart and opening your own heart is through this process of genuine glorification. It should not be artificial, it should not be contrived, but it should be genuine. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that we actually glorify for our self-purification. Because when we meditate on the good qualities of others, we automatically start manifesting those qualities in ourselves. So he said that is why it's also important to glorify. That this process of glorification, it purifies us. And through that purification, we ourselves make spiritual advancement. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, a person who is 100% engaged in the service of the Lord is the emblem of all knowledge. Such a devotee of the Lord in full perfection or devotional service is also perfect by the qualification of the personality of Godhead. As such, the eightfold perfection of mystic power, Ashtasiddhi, constitute very little of his godly opulence. So Prabhupada is making the point that the real glorification of Narad Muni is that he is under the protection of Krishna. And the reason that he is under the protection of Krishna is because of devotional service. And because he is in contact with Krishna, he becomes like Krishna. So Krishna is perfect, the devotee becomes perfect. Krishna has perfect knowledge, the devotee has perfect knowledge. And then Prabhupada, in order to kind of compare it, he says the Ashtasiddhi, they are of negligible importance. So I'll stop over here and see if you have any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Prabhu, like both the cases, Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita, where Vyasadeva or Arjuna asked questions, Lord Krishna or Narada Bhagavan, they both smile. So like, how do we understand? So they know they are great, exalted. They know the reason why everything happens. But on the other hand, the person who asks question, when the senior smiles at them, don't they feel bad, like, did I ask something wrong, or did I do I'm doing something, basically they may feel bad about their disposition at that point when they ask question.
I think the prevailing mood of these conversations is one of a lot of respect and empathy and compassion. That's the dominant mood. I think the smile is something that is, what do they call it? It is vyabhichari. So it flickers. It comes and goes. So like in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, they say that there is Sthai Bhav and there is Vyabhichari Bhav. So Sthai Bhav is the one that is the dominant steady mood. And Vyabhichari is embellishments. That between Krishna and Radha, the Sthai Bhav is Madhurya. But sometimes it also becomes Gora, ghastly, in the sense that Radharani becomes very, very angry at Krishna. Krishna becomes very scared of Radharani, but it does not eclipse the base mood. In fact, it embellishes it. So in the same way that these are fleeting smiles, if for every question Arjun was asking, Krishna kept laughing at him, or same thing with Srila Vyasadeva, that every question Vyasadeva asked, Narad started laughing at him. Maybe it would have been like, that would have been different. But this is just flickering. It comes, and then after that Vyasadeva inquires humbly, and Narad Muni answers sincerely.
Sure, Prabhu. Thank you. Hari.
Thank you, Prabhu. Any other thoughts, comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prem Kishore, Prabhu.
I have a question on. You spoke about to read Shed Darshanas, right? Like, or we need to see if anyone is speaking about spiritual activities, like why they're speaking, what they're speaking about, right? And that will be helping us out in our second part of our inquiry, that is to read and what reach we can do. Also inclusive of what practice to be an example. So my question here is, we do have certain other lineages, like Gaudiya Vaishnavas only, like if you heard about Krishna Vrindavana, where they do not believe in Radharani, but they do believe in Rukmini, right? They do follow the same Bhagavatam recitation or Bhagavad Gita, but little bit they follow more of a vidhi, right? Also, in recently, what I'm seeing is whenever I confront with any of our colleagues or any other friends, few of them are following like. I heard about this Sadhguru recently. This is very latest, like 2 months or so. I don't know since when he is there, but I was just looking at it like, what is he talking about? So is it like we are trying? What I'm trying to ask here is it we have to go through the certain process of reading this Shad Sandarbhas, not Sandarbhas, Shad Darshanas, or any kind of a knowledge we have with what we confront in this material world, and then try to base ourselves on become strong for preaching?
Thank you, Prabhu. So Prabhupada in the purport makes this statement. I remember sitting in a lecture in the temple, and I forget the name of the sannyasi, but it was a Prabhupada disciple who was making this point, and he was making this point that, so what does that mean? If Prabhupada says that one who hasn't read the Shad Darshans, one who hasn't read the Vedic the other Vedas, should not read the Bhagavatam. So that means we should not read the Bhagavatam. But Prabhupada still says that we should read the Bhagavatam. So the understanding is that Srila Prabhupada has given us everything. So in his purports are embedded the realization of the Saddarshans. The purports is also embedded the relevant part of the Vedas, whether it is supporting or contradicting the Upanishads. So we're kind of like children. The mother, when the child is small, the mother does the work. She will take the food and she will mix it and grind it and soften it, make it palatable, and then give it. So the child doesn't have to worry about the cooking of the food, the mashing, the mixing, etc. All the child has to do is to eat it. So that is why very, very important for us to read purports. Because through the purports, Srila Prabhupada has given us all the, even though we don't have the qualifications, he makes us qualified. If we have faith in Srila Prabhupada and we read the purports scrutinizingly, then we automatically achieve that qualification that Srila Prabhupada is asking us. Does that make sense, Prabhu? Does that help?
Yeah, it does.
Thank you, Prabhu. Anything else? Okay, so we'll stop over here. Vanchakalpatarubhayaschet kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anantakoti Vaishnavrind ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Gaur Premanand. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.